Thank you very much for joining us from wherever you are. Now, Chief Justice Sophia Akufo and other judges of the Superior Court have taken the rare step of publicly expressing anger at a controversial research seeking to establish the political leanings of judges of the Supreme Court. The research conducted by a renowned lawyer, Professor Raymond Atuguba, sought to analyze if the voting pattern of judges of the Supreme Court had any relationship with the political parties which appointed them. But the research has received strong condemnation from some judges of the Apex Court, except from the research were revealed at the 2018 GIMPA Law Conference in Accra. My colleague Maxwell Agbagba was at the conference and brought through this report.
Professor Raymond Atuguba says the purpose of the research is to move away from the perception that justices of the Supreme Court deliver justice without any bias under a constitutional democracy. Professor Atuguba points to political party appointments to the bench as one central factor that influences the decision of judges.
It's not about the integrity of the judges. No, this is not about judicial integrity. All I'm saying is this. I took 100 political cases. I analyzed the voting patterns. The voting patterns coincided with the parties who appointed them to power. It is not a coincidence that this happened. To convince me that it's a coincidence, you need to give me arguments that it is a coincidence. Overall, the data reveals that 14 out of 22 NDC appointees, making up 64% of the parties appointees to the Supreme Court, have given judgments in favor of the NDC. The MPP was more successful with 13 of their 16 judges giving a majority judgment in their favor. So 81% consistency.
He believes one way of improving the judiciary is to acknowledge the reality of influences from the appointing political authority on justices of the Supreme Court.
Without the judiciary, our democracy will fail. So improve it, we must. One line of improvement will be to acknowledge political decision-making by our Supreme Court and ensure that there is always a balance of ideological representation in that court. Our current pretentiousness about the apolitical character of the highest court of the land has been discovered by the bench, the bar, researchers, and ardent political and social observers. It will soon be discovered by the general populace, and it may be too late then to regain public trust and respect for the court. The time to act is now.
But Chief Justice Sophia Akufo, who was present during the presentation, says the research by the law professor is new to Ghana and he must be cautious with the cultural context.
You know, it's an American type of research that you have done. This one is this color, this one is this color, this one is that color. Sometimes for some of the live coverage of the Supreme Court, they will actually write R or D after the judge's name. That's fine, but please be careful. Talking about importation, be careful what you're importing into our environment. They are used to that, we are not. We can stand here and accept what you're saying without walking out. We didn't. We didn't walk out. I don't think there was a single judge who agreed with what you were saying. But we didn't walk out. Because our society and the environment is completely different from the American one, which has developed its own systems. We've never had this kind of thing. People can think whatever they like, but when it receives the imprimatur of a professor, it becomes dangerous.
Another Supreme Court Judge, Jones Duche, was even more critical.
You are entitled to your views, but I thought that when we meet, and this gathering is essentially justices of the Superior Court, you come, we assemble here, and you drum this into our ears, I think it is an insult of the highest order. But as judges and as academics, I think we accept it. We'll look at your entire presentation in context.
For Justice Irene Charity-Labi, Raymond Atuguba's research is a direct attack on the integrity of justices of the Supreme Court.
And if we are to agree with you that because they've been appointed during a certain political era, they tend to give judgments leaning towards the party that appointed them, then I start getting worried, because then it's going into the integrity of our judges, that our judges can bend decisions to suit governments that appointed them. And that is not it, because when you read every judgment that they gave as Supreme Court judges, they assign reasons and it has passed on to us at the Court of Appeal and the lower courts.
Reporting for Joy News, Maxwell Agbogba.
Meanwhile, the former Commissioner of Human Rights and Administrative Justice Shraj Emil Short, in an earlier interview with Maxwell Agbogba, said the President's powers of appointment to non-political positions tends to politicize those positions and also influence the appointees in the discharge of their duties.
Appointment powers should be restricted to political positions. I think when you extend the President's powers of appointment to non-political positions, it tends to politicize those positions and influence the appointees in the discharge of their duties, even though it should not be so. In practice, sometimes it does. And as I gave an example of the IGP, the President appointing the IGP, I think that is totally unacceptable. We should have a more transparent and inclusive method of appointment, which would ensure that the IGP does not have to look behind when he's discharging his duties or when his subordinates are dealing with offenses committed by the supporters of the sitting administration. And we have seen in the past that has to some extent resulted in constraint in the way political offenses are dealt with. So that's just an example. And also appointing the Chief Justice. What business does the President have in appointment of the Chief Justice to IGP? The President should restrict himself or herself to appointing those who are going to assist him to govern,
Still on legal matters and Professor Raymond Atuguba's take, the University of Ghana lecturer has waded into the controversy about the mode of admission into the Ghana School of Law. Professor Atuguba is of the opinion if the Constitution was to be applied fully, all members of the General Legal Council would have been in jail for failing to ensure passage of the LI regulating entry into the Ghana School of Law. The Supreme Court sometime last year gave the General Legal Council 6 months to pass an LI if it wants to legalize its interview and entrance exam procedures as mode of entry into the Ghana School of Law. But that has not happened, as some processes ought to be first followed and has to also be laid in Parliament.
Roll forward to today, Asari and Attorney General. If we are going strictly by the Constitution, by now the entire General Legal Council should be in Nsawam, because the Supreme Court decision on it has not been complied with by the General Legal Council. And so under Article 2, 4 and 5, 3, 4 and 5, where you do not obey the decision of the Supreme Court, it's characterized as a high crime, isn't it? And the penalty is 10 years in jail without the option of a fine. And after that, for 10 years, you don't have the chance to be a public officer. Because to the best of my knowledge, the LI has not yet been passed in order to manage the entry into law school. Now, it is true that the judgment was pragmatic, isn't it? Because many things would have happened if the Supreme Court hadn't gone that way. But we also have to see it in terms of the Supreme Court going soft on its own. So, the point I'm trying to make is that we have reviews and appeals and removal of justices as ways of moderating judicial excesses. But we also need public scrutiny. The judiciary is not comfortable with public scrutiny. But if our democracy is to sustain, we must be brave enough to scrutinize the judiciary.
You're still watching Joy News today. Let's now cross over to Parliament, where the House is currently debating the State of the Nation address presented to the House last Thursday.
Yes. Leader, are you seen very well?
Mr. Speaker, the member is making misleading statements. I'd be very grateful if he can furnish us with the sources of the copious examples he's attributing to the honorable member and minority leader for Tamale South. So,
honorable member, I advise you to move away from making references to individuals. Honorable Majority Leader, I've understood, I advised him, move away from references to people and proceed.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. But I think the records are there. There was official publication by Graphic and also Ghanaian Times, which are all state-owned newspapers. Mr. Speaker, the opposition party wants to create a gloomy picture about this country as if all is not well with us, with the sole aim of driving away foreign investors from investing in our economy. Mr. Speaker, it's not appropriate to paint such an erroneous impression. Mr. Speaker, our noble committee received a delegation from Republic of South Africa, and to be specific, KwaZulu-Natal province. Their mission was very simple, that they are in this country to learn from our best practices in terms of combating crime, and also how best rule of law has become the order of the day. That was just about 2 months ago, Mr. Speaker. So, it will be very, very unfortunate for anybody to allude to the fact that, as a country, we are in a state of insecurity. That is not the case. Mr. Speaker, I want to state it categorically, without shred of any contradiction, that Ghana is pretty safe. Mr. Speaker, the record shows that crime rate has reduced as compared to the previous years. Mr. Speaker, if you go through the policy outcome indicators and targets by both Ministry of National Security and Ministry of Interior, it suggests that crime has reduced drastically in this current administration than compared to that of the previous administration. Mr. Speaker, I want to put it on record that a peaceful country is one which has a well-functioning government. And Mr. Speaker, the NPP government, under the able leadership of His Excellency Nana Abudankwa Akufo-Addo, is functioning very well. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, it's important to emphasize on the point that the threats facing Africa, which include humanitarian crisis, violent extremism, terrorist financing, cross-border crime, and conflicts, are emerging and multiplying. But Mr. Speaker, even though they are compounded moreover by economic difficulties and climate change, I want to state it that with visionary president in the person of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo as the commander-in-chief of the Ghana Armed Forces, even though no country is immune to this stress, Ghana will survive, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are doing very well as a country. Of course, if you want to say Ghana is safe and our economy is doing well, our friends on the other side will challenge you. But facts are facts, as President pointed out, that you can't argue with facts. Statistics show that our external observers, including Bloomberg, all the credit rating agencies, Fitch, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, have all credited Ghana that our economy is doing well. And therefore, Ghana has been ranked as one of the best destinations for investment in terms of stock exchange.
You're live on your most authoritative and credible news source, the Joy News channel, and you're watching News Today. In stories yet to come, an up-and-coming exam at the Bolga Nursing College likely to be negatively affected due to an unresolved impasse between tutors and the principal. And views vary among transport operators following a reduction in fuel prices this morning. The details shortly after the breather. You're welcome back. Now, academic activities could come to a halt at the Bolgatanga Nursing Training College in the Upper East region if an impasse between tutors and the principal of the college is not resolved. The tutors say an impending exam for students of the school is under threat due to friction between themselves and the principal. They've been addressing a press conference at Bolgatanga in the Upper West region, from where our correspondent Albert Sori reports.
The tutors of the Bolgatanga Nursing Training College say in September last year, they petitioned the head of health training institutions about certain decisions of the principal that they felt were inappropriate.
First of all, we talked about the fact that there were issues of procurement. The procurement policy was not being followed. We also had problems related to the development levy that this college had, through a previous director, instituted to be able to help development in our college, which was being not utilized. I'm sure as you have come into this college, you have seen that the college is actually dilapidated. The facilities aren't the way a nursing training college should look. We also accused or leveled allegations against our principal because for the fact that certain activities that concern academic work were being ignored. For example, when there are certain courses that when they are taught, they need to follow up in the field. So we take students for field trips, but there was a time when he came, students were already, one of the programs, students were sent on field trips, but it was abrogated because he felt that he said there was no money to continue. But that it means the students would have only had a theoretical aspect and not had a practical aspect.
They add that the Ministry of Health was copied in their petition, and this prompted a visit by the Deputy Minister of Health, Tina Mensah, to the college. The tutors allege that rather than tackle the issue in the manner that they had hoped, the Deputy Minister of Health threatened to transfer them if they were not ready to work with the principal.
So we petitioned her to keep the principal out of to stay out and get someone who possibly could come and take over while the investigations are going on. Because initially when we met with her, she told us that the investigations were not over, so they can't tell us anything about the report. So for that reason, we still thought that once the investigations are not over, she should allow him to stay aside while school continues, academic work continues. But she declined. In fact, she was not happy, and she left, and with a statement that she was going to transfer us. So we are waiting for our transfers, and when the transfers come, we will go to wherever they will send us.
The Bolgatanga Nursing Training College is one of the oldest tertiary institutions in the Upper East region, but has seen very little development over the years. Some building projects in the college have been abandoned, even though it is highly constrained in terms of infrastructure. The tutors of the college say their desire to see the college develop is the basis for their demands for action to be taken against the principal.
It's in the interest of the student. In fact, you need to see certain times when we are teaching and students are running around looking for chairs to come and sit down. And to the extent that sometimes when they don't find chairs, they are standing by the windows and listening to the lecture, or they are standing inside the classroom and listening to the lecture. Is that the situation we want to subject the people who are coming to take care of us in the ward? Is that how we want them to? What are we impacting in them? Are we actually showing that sympathy that we expect students, these trainees, to come out and show sympathy and empathy for our patients? Is that what we are showing to them?
School has just reopened and most students are yet to report. However, if the current impasse between the tutors and the principal of the college is anything to go by, there is a high possibility of a sit-down strike or even a total boycott of tutoring if a proper mediation is not done and the problem resolved. For Joy News, Albert Sori, reporting from Bolgatanga.
From the Upper East region, we come back to Accra, where views are diverse among transport operators after fuel prices saw a reduction at the pumps this morning. The reduction comes at the back of President Akufo-Addo's assent of the new Special Petroleum Tax Amendment Act last night. Joy News' Ifwa Evans Chinwe has been interacting with some of the drivers in Accra.
No, there's no change. It's still the same. It's still the same, right?
Okay. So what you're saying is there's no change?
I haven't seen anything. Look at it. Have you seen anything? Anytime I buy it, I got this thing. It's still the same. I haven't seen any change.
Okay. So when you heard the news about the reduction in petroleum prices, how did you feel?
So I didn't feel anything. It's still the same.
Normally, if I intend to fill my tank, it will cost me about 3 million plus. I don't know of now. So I'm also failing, and I also want to know.
How much are you buying this morning?
I normally fill my tank. It takes me about 3 or 4 days, and so today the tank is empty and I want to fill it.
Okay. And how much are you?
I anticipate that it shouldn't be anything more than 3 million.
Okay. So it means that there's a slight change.
That is because I have heard
not much change.
There should be that change must be seen.
You're yet to see that change?
By 320. Today I'm anticipating that I'll buy about 300 or maybe 305. That's what I'm anticipating now, but I'm yet to see.
But how did you feel when you heard that there's a reduction in petroleum prices?
I'm so much happy because I normally use car, and if you ever hear that the fuel price had gone down, then it means it is a relief for people who use cars. So I'm happy.
Even if it's 1 peso, it's a reduction. But what will its impact be to the pockets of the ordinary Ghanaian? Yes, today you're talking about this percentage. Is it going to reflect in price reduction? That is a first. If not, then to the ordinary Ghanaian it's irrelevant.
When you first heard the news?
I was very happy. I was very, very happy because...
How much were you buying before?
Every day I used to buy about 100 Ghana cedis for a day. And now maybe with this reduction, I think at least 80 Ghana.
You're hoping to pay less?
Yeah, so 60 Ghana or 80 Ghana will be fine for me.
Reduct the petrol, I think, is good for us because this is what we have been crying for. not me. Some can afford, some cannot afford. So if it equals to what we will benefit, I think we thank God. It's good, because let me think, this morning, this is what people were saying, so they are happy. So we are all happy.
There has indeed been a reduction in petroleum prices, and most drivers are excited because they get to pay less when they visit their favorite gas stations to buy either petrol or diesel. But most drivers I noticed are a little skeptical because they think it's going to be a one-off payment and they will soon go back to paying the same amount of money they were paying before. Some also think the news is ridiculous because they have not really seen any change. For Joy News, my name is Ifwa Evans-Chineri.
You're still watching Joy News today here on the Joy News channel on Multi TV. Now, the mechanical department of the Kumasi Vocational and Technical Institute in Kumasi has built a mobile cassava grater. According to available statistics, post-harvest losses in root and tubers, especially yam and cassava, stands at 30 to 60%. The innovation is meant to address the recurrence of high post-harvest losses to equip farmers to process their cassava. Prince Apia has been interacting with the students behind this.
40-year-old Amanyameche is a cassava farmer in Adumenu in the Adansi municipality of Ashanti region. She is unable to convey even 40% of the cassava she harvests from her farm every season. Even the little she brings home fetches her equally little money.
I sell 3 medium-sized tubers for 2 Ghana cedis. I don't have money to hire laborers to help me on my farm, so I go with my children. It's very far from the farm to the house. We rest stop so many times before we get home. Even with the children, I am unable to bring everything home.
Averagely, she sells 3 medium-sized tubers for 2 Ghana cedis. Cheap as it may seem, Amma could earn more if the backlog left on the farm was brought home. This is a cassava grater. It is unique and different from the one already in the market because of its mobility. It is also produced from local materials.
So we decided that why don't we do something in the form of a mobile so that the person can carry it to the farm and then do everything over there and come out with the actual product, not in a raw state. So we sit and consider a whole lot of things. The things shouldn't be too heavy. It should be something that anyone can carry it, even women or even children can carry it. And then we came out with this idea that it should be in the form of a wheelbarrow, which will not need much energy to push it, and then also get an engine which is less consume fuel very less.
Peter Claver de Lawrence is head of mechanical department of the school. This grater is designed to help farmers like Amanyameche to reduce large quantities of cassava often left rot on the farm.
The adjuster, if you want the cassava to be soft, you adjust the adjuster to the teeth. If you don't want it to be soft, you just adjust it to the back.
Christian Eji Coleman is one of the student trainee brains behind the technology.
5 cedi petrol can able to grate 5 sacks of cassava.
To improve the technology, the team is exploring ways to make it possible for farmers to use waste produce to power it.
We are going to change the petrol engine to biogas, where the farmer can use the peeling of the cassava to put into his biogas digester. As it digests and then form the gas, the only thing that the farmer will do is fill the tank with gas and then he or she can run with it.
Eunice Achekun Ajay lectures at Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology Mechanical Engineering Department. She suggests collaboration with KNUST to fine-tune the innovation.
Also, we need to package it properly. If we take it just on site, the issue of just the transportation is not adequate enough to convince farmers to patronize it.
Richard Adojemfe is manager of KVTI.
So our next move is to contact the farmers, the Cassava Farmers Association, and those who are into cassava processing, right? So we are trying to identify some of these groups. Then we will discuss or sell this idea to them.
Prince Apia reporting.
You're still watching Joy News today on your most reliable and authoritative news source, Joy News. We take a quick break and return with business.